are listening to Fast Track Podcast, the place to be to fast track your personal finance or fast track your business, or both, through a series of conversations with those who have learned it, done it, and made it. Nico James is 48 years old. He's half Caribbean British, half German, and lives near Barcelona, Spain. All his life, he wanted to be successful and has read many self-help books in order to make it. He worked his way up career ladder and earning good money. Then he became an entrepreneur, and that's when his real journey began. 9 years later, heavily in debt, broke, heartbroken, and divorced, he hit rock bottom. In order to survive, he had to reinvent everything, and reinvention didn't happen overnight. He's in a very good place now, and his journey still continues. Welcome to Fast Track Podcast, Nico.
Yes, hello, good morning. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Good morning. If the audience is listening to it in the morning, good morning, everyone. You mentioned that you want to make it as a young man. Tell us about why you want to be successful and make it.
Well, as a young man, I always had these visions of becoming rich and famous, and making it was just a natural destination. Being successful, having nice cars, and having a nice job and a nice family, and living the good life. It's like a reward of all the work that you put in, of all the skills that you learn, and making it. Back in the day, was just like the icing on the cake. You've made the cake, you put the icing on, and wow, this is the dream fulfilled. And that's why I wanted to do that. I was inspired by many people during my life, many entrepreneurs. Back in the day, when I was young, in the UK, it was Richard Branson who everyone talked about, and with his company Virgin, he just really inspired me to make it in the UK. He was like a hero. He was a student. He had this, I think it was a magazine he had at the university he was studying. And then slowly he came up with this Virgin thing, the brand, and he made it, and he was like a role model, one of the many role models I had. That was back in the day. Nowadays, Richard Branson is different. I think he's still very, very, people still sort of admire him, but there's so many other people that I think have overtaken his place, and obviously he's getting older now.
And since you are inspired by those famous people, successful people, how did it affect your career path?
Well, my career path, it was back in the day when I was at school. I just wanted to work in a bank, and I told one of my father's friends I wanted to work in a bank, and he just basically said, "Why do you just want to work in a bank? You need to be more ambitious. You need to do something else. You should study business. That's where the real money is." So then I said, "Okay, let's study business," and I researched. Then I found some courses that I wanted to do. And then I told my uncle about it, my German uncle, and he said, "Why do you just want to do business? You should do European business." And, because I'm half German and half British, he said to me basically that, it was better to do something more international. The course I did in the end was European business with German. And it was it was 3 years in the UK, and then 1 year in Germany. The idea was to get a double qualification, but the university I was at, in the end, they fell out with a partner university, and in the end, I just got 1 degree, not 2 degrees. But that basically sort of put me on the course, for an international career, and I started off working in a German company, setting up a subsidiary in England. Basically, I had to translate a catalog. And once I translated the catalog, my boss said, "Okay, well, you've translated the catalog. Why don't you set up our subsidiary? And, you can head up the subsidiary. You can be the leader of that project. And, you're young, you're only 23, but let's do it." And that's what I did. I set up a subsidiary. I had no experience. I found a place to actually set up this company, and it was very successful. The company was basically dealing with promotional material. It was a new company with a very innovative way of marketing. It was basically this catalog which, back in those days, the internet was just starting out. This was 1996. So there was internet, but it was still, people who had a hobby as internet.
Yeah.
There were hackers and stuff. I set up that company. We sent out the catalogs. We had a really good start. Things were very successful. But then after a couple of years, I got bored. I'm the type of guy who needs challenges, and the challenge was over very quickly after a couple of years. And then I had a calling to learn Spanish, and I left that job and I moved to Spain.
When you say calling, where's that calling coming from? How do you feel that calling?
That's a good question. Basically, it was an inner calling. I had Spanish in the last part of my course. I had a module in Spanish, and I basically said to myself, okay, Spanish, let's do that. And I actually wanted to do that after university, but then this opportunity came up to set up this subsidiary, to translate the catalog and then set up the subsidiary. And I said, okay, the Spanish thing, let's put it off. We can do that some other time. And, after these 2 years in the company, I said to myself, okay, well, maybe now there's time to go back to the original idea and study Spanish. And so I did. So I left the job and I went to Spain. It was an inner calling, basically, that I had put off 2 years previously. And I said to myself, okay, let's do that. Now's the time. So I did. I packed everything up. I went to Spain. I did a 6-month intensive course, and I became fluent in Spanish. And then basically I said, okay, my idea was to learn 4 languages. So after Spain, to go to Portugal, then to France, and then to Italy.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with Spain. I was in Barcelona. Life was good. The sun was shining. Yeah, I was having a ball of a time. I worked in a company selling ecological fly traps around the world. And they sent me to Australia. And I went to Australia and then came back. But the company had no money. There were some bad things going on in the company. Money embezzlement and I don't know what else. And that job didn't last long. Then after that, I had to find a job. And back in those days in Spain, there was a big crisis, a huge crisis. I sent out 300 applications everywhere around Spain.
Wow. Which year?
This was 1997.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So it was a long time ago. Okay. I'm going to be 50 next year. So I may be a bit older than you. And so back in those days, there was a big crisis. I sent off 300 applications. That's all I did. And there was no response. I just got rejection letters. And I thought, okay, well, my Spanish dream maybe is going to come to an end. Maybe I have to look elsewhere for work. I looked for work back home, Germany or the UK. So I sent off 4 applications to the UK, 4 applications to Germany. And I got accepted for an interview with a big chemical company in Germany. And I went to an assessment center. Of the 18, 6 of us were picked. And I was lucky enough to be one of them. And a couple of months later, I was working in Düsseldorf in sales. That's when my sales career really started off.
That you already have a quite international career, from UK to Barcelona to Australia, then to Germany.
Yes. I mean, I'm. People call me a citizen of the world because my father was from a little island called Saint Lucia from the Caribbean. He left the island when he was 20. He went to the UK, and then he enlisted in the British Army. And then he got stationed in Germany, and in Germany is where he met my mother. And later on, I was born. So I was born in Germany. I spoke German to my mother. I spoke English to my dad. But, the English that my dad spoke to me, it wasn't a proper English. It was a Caribbean English, So probably the closest is probably a Jamaican accent to a St. Lucian accent, although there are differences. Just imagine, in a way, you're growing up with Angela Merkel and... you've got Bob Marley as your father, and Bob is trying to speak to Angela, and they're completely different. I mean, my dad wasn't a Rasta, okay, but you get the idea. They're 2 completely different cultures. But I grew up in Germany, and then I was in Germany until I was 7, and then from 7 we moved to the UK. As a child, it was quite difficult for me because I grew up between 3 cultures. So when I was in Germany, I was the German with a German mother, living in an army camp or army residential area, let's say. All the kids who I played with, they were all children of soldiers.
Yeah.
But most of these guys, they said they had white parents, and
Yeah.
my father was one of the few black soldiers in this residence. And then I have I had my German mother. So it was, it was crazy. So I was being called all sorts of names. One day I was called the N word, and then the next day, well, the two N words actually. One was, I'm not going to say it, but the black kid,
Yeah.
and then the other one was a Nazi. So one minute I was
Crazy.
a black kid, but I wasn't really black. I had curly hair, and then the next minute I'm a Nazi.
I
Yes,
think back then, like the world is not so flat in a way, less diverse, and people travel less, and then they are, not so used to people with different backgrounds, different colors, different, ethnic group. Do you think your childhood has an impact on you as a person, on your personality, or later your career path internationally or personal choices in life?
Yes, oh, definitely. All my life, I've been foreigner. Wherever I went, I was a bit of a foreigner. Even though I'm half German, half British. I've always been the strange one. I think all my life, especially in the early part of my life, I was always trying to fit in. I always wanted to be lighter skinned. I didn't want to have curly hair. I was being made fun of all the time. It took me a while to get up to standard within the school. My English, it was good, but it wasn't good enough to learn at school when we moved to England when I was 7. So I had to take some extra lessons, but then after a year, I was fine. And then every time I went back to Germany, in my holidays, I was always the dark kid. I was always the guy who lived in the UK, with a black dad. So I think this has definitely influenced me, but it's in the end, it got me used to being a different, a different person wherever I was. I've never been treated as let's say, a normal person. What is a normal person? I mean, we could spend another hour speaking about that. But I think it's influenced me in the way that it's helped me accept the person that I am, that I am different, that I'm not like everyone else. And I think in the end, it's made me stronger, and it's made me not afraid to accept challenges, not afraid to be in situations where, everyone's sort of looking at me and, who's this guy? But
Yeah.
it's helped me rise above the situation.
Yeah.
And and really bring out the differences that I have.
I think that we can see that the traits that you have from your personal experiences. We haven't touched on your entrepreneurial journey yet. That is a very interesting story. Do you want to share with us how did you start to become an entrepreneur and what happened afterwards?
Yeah, I'm sorry I went off at a tangent there, but you did ask where did your career,
Yeah.
where did it start, and it really started there. The entrepreneur part, that was a very exciting part of my life. So I told you about the fact that when I was in Germany, that's when let's say my sales career started. And at the time when I was in Germany, because I came from Spain, my Spanish girlfriend back then, she was from Barcelona, and the subsidiary of the company I worked for, the German company, it was actually it still is today, based in Barcelona. I was working for the international accounts, and one day we had an international meeting. So I was part of a team where the customer had different subsidiaries in different countries. And so we'd have international meetings every twice a year, just to see how things were going, if there was sort of synergies internationally, et cetera, et cetera. So in these international meetings, this is where I met people from Spain. And it just so happened that the company in Spain wanted to become more international. They want to become more international in their sales effort. Because their sales team was very Spanish. So I met these people in the international meeting. And then, a couple of months later, I had the phone call from the sales director in Spain. And he basically asked me if I would be interested in working in Spain, in taking care of these accounts in Spain. And of course, my dream back then was to work in Spain and to live in Spain. It took a long time. It was very complicated internally in the company, but I made it back to Spain and I took the offer. And I negotiated a very good salary and very good conditions. So I started from an assistant in Germany. I got promoted to a key account manager in Spain. And, I was one of 4 key account managers. Things were really going well. And I did a really good job for 4 years. Good sales, internationally, really good. So I met all my objectives. But then after 4 years, I became bored again because things got a bit too easy.
Yeah.
And I got a surprise one day and they said to me, okay, look, you did a good job, but you're slacking. You should do trade marketing. Okay, do trade marketing. If you do a good job here, we'll put you back into sales and you'll get some bigger accounts. Well, that never happened. So I did my 2 years. I did a good job there. It was probably the best 2 years in my whole career in that company. And I learned a lot. And then I said, okay, look, there's no more opportunities for me here in sales than in this company, then I'm going to leave. And my boss said to me, well, why do you want to leave? If you want to look for another job, you should stay in the job, because otherwise, other companies, they are going to look at you as a failure. I said to him, I said, look, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up my own company. He goes, you're going to set up your own company? I said, yes. Well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to import wine. You're going to import wine? Wow, that sounds really exciting. That's how my entrepreneurial journey started. I imported wine. So I left my job. I got married. And then a couple of months later, I had my company set up and I was importing wine. I did a course as a sommelier and I did a wine marketing course. And I made my first contacts and I established some suppliers, some wineries from around the world, mainly German wineries. And, everyone's looking at me as if I was crazy.
Yeah.
How come you're importing wine into Spain? You should be exporting it. And I said to them, yeah, look, German wine is really good. And I did a few tests with a few restaurants and they went very well. And that's how my wine journey started. I became an entrepreneur. I imported wine. I basically established some brands. Some of those brands are still going today. And things went really well. I was importing wine also from other countries in the end, from the Alsace, from France. Then I had some champagnes. I had wines from Australia, from New Zealand. And I had a really, really good international portfolio. And I made a good name for myself here in Spain. And my wines were all over the place in good restaurants.
Wow.
And things were on a roll. Things went really, really well. And this was back, we're talking about 2006.
Okay.
So
I have a question there.
Sure, sure.
It's really, really difficult to start a new business for any entrepreneurs. Like, this is a fact. So I wonder, how did you plan your new venture? Did you have a business plan? Did you talk to people, or you already know what you are going to do? You already know the opportunity is there. You just need to do it. Like, how did you go from quit your job to start a very successful business?
Yeah, I listened to my intuition. So I said to myself, okay, because back in the day, my then wife, we then later got divorced and I remarried. But she was from a wine growing region, and all the friends that we had, they were all in the wine industry. So I was introduced to the wine world and the sparkling wine world here in Spain. And it was just fascinating. And it was, in Spain, especially with this nice weather that we have in spring and summer, you spend a lot of time out of your house. So you spend a lot of time dining out. And, when you dine out or when you eat out, wine is always there. And, you don't get drunk with wine. Sometimes you do, but, the wine is the accompanying drink to the food that you eat. It's like part and parcel of the culture. So wine has always played an important part in my life since I came to Spain. And I thought this would be natural, it would be a natural progression. So what I did was I spoke to a few people, a few friends, and then some other people who previously worked in my company and then moved to the wine industry. And I asked them, I have this idea. I want to import some wine and maybe export some wine as well, some Spanish wine to other countries. But do you think this could work? And they said, yeah, it could work. And you'll be so good at it. So I said, okay, let's do that. And I did do a business plan. I had a few business plans drawn up. But because I had the money, because, I got a good payoff from the company and I also had a few investments, the money, the monetary aspect didn't really worry me, because I knew that I could make it work. The thing I didn't take into consideration was that there was a big crisis coming and this crisis would totally eat me up. And I think that was a big mistake I made. I just thought I was bigger than any crisis, and a crisis couldn't affect my performance because I was better. I was going to make it. I had all this money. I had no debts, and it was going to work. So the business plan was there, and I sort of stuck to it. But then later on, other forces took effect, and the crisis, even in the beginning of the crisis, the crisis I think started in 2008, but it didn't really affect me until about 2011, 2012. That was when it became really, really bad, and then with some really bad decisions I made, things were going bad, but I had these crazy expansion plans, and I borrowed money from family and from friends and from the banks. I did it all. I didn't just go to one source. I went to, how people talk about multiple streams of income. I had multiple streams of loans,
Okay.
and and that was just totally crazy. I had no idea how I was going to pay these back, but I didn't.
Which year in your business?
Which year was this? This was over a few years. So I think the first loan I took out was probably in 2008, and then I took out other loans progressively.
Like 4 or 5 years in your business.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years in my business.
Yeah.
And today, if I were to do something similar, I mean, that's just totally crazy. I mean, any business that you start, you should get into profit. You should get into the black as soon as you possibly can. My accountant, he was saying, yeah, Nico, this was the first year. He said to me, Nico, you've made a 40,000 euro loss. And I said to him, yeah, but it's the first year. Yeah, it's the first year. But, just so you know, 40,000, but this 40,000, every year it just got worse. I didn't care. I wasn't aware of it. It didn't sort of affect me properly. I should have sort of taken note and made some adjustments, but I didn't. I just borrowed more money because things were, in the back of my mind, things were going to get better. The crisis was going to be over, and all I had to do was sell more. And, these sales would magically appear, because I was blaming everything on the crisis. So sales were down 1 year. Yeah, because there's a crisis. But next year, things are going to get better. Okay, how are they going to get better? I don't know. There's not going to be a crisis. People are going to buy more. That was my answer. And I was totally arrogant. I was totally out of touch with the world. I wasn't listening to my intuition. And I made some really bad decisions. I was probably the worst entrepreneur in Barcelona at the time. And, then I bought a house, and then my lifestyle didn't change. I went out and I spent money. It's not like I spent money lavishly, but it's not like I spent loads and loads of money, but I spent more than I should have, let's say. And I did this on a continual basis. And I think in the end, this was my downfall, not because there was a crisis, but how I reacted to the crisis. I should have reacted in a more humble way, and I should have taken action. I should have cut my spending earlier. I cut my spending, and I cut my workforce and my outgoings. I had an office in Barcelona. In the end, I got rid of that office, and in the end, I was working from home. But I should have done that like 3 years earlier, and I didn't. And I paid the price. And even today, I'm still sort of paying the price, because you don't get rid of the kind of debt that I built up. You don't get rid of that just from 1 year to the next, unless you become a millionaire, like after you hit rock bottom, which wasn't the case in my case.
Yeah.
So many learnings there, Yazi.
I totally relate to what you said, that as an entrepreneur, when you start your business, you should try to be profitable as soon as possible. And then there's one saying from a serial entrepreneur. He said, people with money come to entrepreneurship, lives with experience. People with experience come to entrepreneurship, live with money. That was kind of...
It's funny, huh? It's funny. And there's a saying in the wine world, because, a lot of people who are well off. I mean, I have a friend who's very well off, and he said to me, how can I make money in the wine business? And I said to him, look, there's a saying in the wine business that, if you want to make money in the wine business, if you want to make a small fortune in the wine business, you got to start with a big fortune. And many people, they have this vision of the wine world that is, it's very sort of luxurious, that, people working in the wine industry, all they do is drink wine all day. And it's, because everyone wants wine, and everyone, and we sell it all over the world, that it's an easy business to get into. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, the wine business is a very difficult business to get into. It's a very long-term strategical business to get into. and the payoff is very long term. When you start a winery, you're not going to make money. This is like general sort of lines that people take. You don't make money in the wine industry in the first 10 years. It takes 10 years to get your money back, to start to get your money back. And even then, it's a slog because there's so many wines all over the world, so many wineries. And unless you've got a big brand, unless you're Moet or one of these big guys, it's difficult to get your name in the heads of the consumers. And otherwise, you're just fighting for survival and you're marketing all the time. It's a very, very difficult business to get into. Very difficult.
I can imagine, especially in wine countries, the market is kind of maturer than emerging markets where there are still a lot of white spaces.
Yes, definitely. In Europe, for instance, where we drink a lot of wine, I mean, it depends where you are in Europe. There are countries where they drink a lot. Like in Switzerland, the consumption per capita is very high. In Belgium, they drink a lot of sparkling wine, and we can go through the countries. But in the emerging markets, the wine consumption per capita is very low, but there's lots of opportunity, especially in China, for instance. Everyone's going to China, but there's lots of brands and everyone's going in there. And then you've got the regulation to contend with as well. That's not an easy market to break into either, especially if you don't have a brand which has a name or some kind of established reputation.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, when your business was not in a very good situation, you took a lot of loan. And afterwards, how did you reinvent yourself? What changed?
Well, I really hit rock bottom because it wasn't just the business that that went under. Everything went under. My personal situation, my marriage, and the house that I just bought, or that we had bought. In the end, I had to give it back to the bank. I couldn't pay the mortgage anymore. And everything just fell apart. I was actually thinking of leaving the wine industry and just starting anew in somewhere else. I attempted that, but it didn't work. And my real opportunities were within the wine industry, but I just had to sort of take a sidestep. So I wanted to sort of get away. It's like, you're in a house and things aren't going well and you just want to leave that house. That's kind of how I felt. I felt like, I shouldn't be in this house anymore. Let's go to another house and start afresh. But there were good things inside that house. There were also bad things, but I just had to find the good things within this house. I had to go into the cellar and, just tidy up the cellar and just figure out, what is good in the cellar? What can I use in the cellar to make the house better? And that's basically what I did. I dug deep and I reinvented myself in the sense that I stayed within the wine industry, but I became a freelance export specialist. And I basically used my language credentials. I speak German and English. And I've traveled around the world, and I've been to many wine fairs. And because I have this network of people in the wine industry all around the world, especially in Europe, I said, well, maybe I can use this. And that's what I did. And once I made that decision, within 3 weeks, I had different opportunities. I had 3 potential customers. In the end of the 3, I took 2 customers. I started working as a freelance export specialist within the wine industry. I thought to myself, why didn't I do this before? If I'd done this before, and I could have, then I could have saved myself a lot of money. All that money invested in it.
Because you don't have like a fixed cost, right? Because you are providing your expertise.
Exactly. It's basically I'm sort of selling my expertise, my time, to help these wineries export their wine. And before I was actually physically buying the wine. I was storing it. I had to pay the taxes on it. I had to transport it to different customers, to different restaurants. And, then you have to wait for the money. So the actual cash flow is just a nightmare. Whereas as a consultant or as a freelancer, the only downside that you have is you don't have any money tied up. You're a consultant and you just have to wait for your fee at the end of the month. And then, you get commission on sales. So I did that. Basically, I did that for 4 or 5 years. It helped me to pick myself up again. And then later on, I got a better offer. And for the last 5 years, I'm now salaried export manager for a large winery here in Spain. Everything has its pros and cons, but I think I learned a lot during that journey. Now I'm in a better place. With this inkling, this entrepreneurial journey it was a roller coaster. I had lots of experience. It was fun, and there are things that I liked about it. There are things I don't like about it, obviously. But I still have that sort of in my veins. I take this entrepreneurial learning and I use it in my job every day. Sometimes we have to make important decisions, and obviously that the learning I had from this experience is vital, and it can help to solve problems and make the right decisions, basically. And that's what I'm doing.
Definitely. I think for every single entrepreneur, once you started the journey yourself, the learnings is just unimaginable. You can never get the same learnings if you didn't start a business. And for your current job now, do you still feel it's challenging enough, or you feel it's not challenging enough?
Sometimes you have your days and you think, okay, sometimes it's just the other way around. Wow, this is so challenging. Can I still do it? You sort of doubt yourself. For the moment, I'm very happy. I'm very content with the work, and there are challenges. Sometimes you have to sort of, as one of my superiors says, if you can easily jump over the bar, then it's up to you to put the bar higher. Yeah. And I like that, because at the end of the day, your superiors, they can only do so much to motivate you. You have your own responsibility as well to motivate yourself and to find other avenues, to be curious, to make sure that your work is satisfying and fulfilling, and that you're motivated. Yeah. And I think this is very important as well. So I dig into that as well. And I think now, because I'm an ambitious person, what I've done now, when I sort of have this feeling, I do communicate it to my superior, but sometimes they don't have the capacity because they've got other priorities. They can't just put the bar higher for me, especially if you're overperforming anyway. I mean, what are they going to do? Then I'm going to say, okay, you're growing by 20%, now you've got to grow by 40. They can do that, but that's not necessarily the answer. So what I've learned is to sort of accept situations and dig deep and put the bar higher myself. I think that's the key. And then the other thing I do, as you know, in my spare time, I always I'm on Twitter, and I do microblogging. I have this inner calling to help others and motivate them to set their bar higher, and also to dig into themselves to overcome their situations or their shortcomings, and improve their skill sets. That sort of helps me on the other side as well.
Yeah, actually, that's what I was going to ask you about your Twitter account, that you share a lot of very motivational micro contents on Twitter, and you have a lot of followers. So is that something that you feel is the inner calling now, that you want to help like younger people, to learn from your personal experience, your wisdom that you gained in the last decades?
It's a good question, because when I remember when I had my wine business back in 2009 was when I joined Twitter. My then wife, she said to me, "Oh, you joined Facebook as well." And back then, Facebook was just like this new platform. It was to share, to get in contact with your friends and your school friends. I mean, previous to that, there was some other social media platforms like Friends Reunited. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but that was before Facebook came, and you could get in touch with your school colleagues. So this was all really new. And then Facebook, I thought, well, Facebook is just another one of these platforms. How can it be good for my business? So, this was a whole new journey, and I went from Facebook to Twitter. Yeah, I went to LinkedIn, but LinkedIn back then was much more sort of professional. It still is, but now it's more of a blogging platform. And, back in the day, Twitter, you could only do 140 characters. Today, you can do 280. People use a lot of hashtags. Now, if you use a hashtag, people block you. Totally different experience. But I also went into videos, and I have an interview. I don't know if you know this. I interviewed, because he started in the wine industry, funny enough, as well. Gary V, who's
everybody knows him.
Everybody knows him, yeah, but he started in the wine industry, and he started off doing videos, of wine tastings. And I got inspired by him as well. And I said, okay, yeah, maybe I should get into social media and do some videos, do some other content. I want to be different to all my competitors. Let's do it. I went to a blogging fair in Lisbon, in Portugal, with all these wine bloggers. And, this got me going. So I went off on a different tangent. Sort of this journey, it got me going on to actually starting a blog. I had a video blog, and then last year in September, I sort of reconnected with Twitter. We had a pandemic, and I had a lot of time to think. There wasn't that much work to do. I mean, there was always work to do, but when I wasn't working, there was other things going on in my mind, and I thought, okay, let's connect with Twitter. So my Twitter journey sort of restarted, and now I don't write about wine that much anymore. I write about other things because I've always read a lot about self-development, and it's something that's fascinated me, and I've always been interested in it. And what I basically try to do is to, like you said, the wisdom and the learnings and the experience that I've had, I transform that into tweets. And when I'm really inspired, when I have a bit more time, and when I'm in the flow, I do my threads. I want to help people and connect with people so that they get inspired to overcome their particular situation, just to step up, just to become better versions of themselves. That fulfills me that people, actually, that I get these likes, and not because of the likes, but because it helps people.
Yeah, they get value from your tweets, from your content.
Yeah, that keeps me fulfilled. So, on the one hand, I'm selling wine, I'm making a living, I'm also connecting with people in a different way. Mm-hmm. And then, when I'm not working, I connect with people on Twitter, and I help them become better versions of themselves.
Tell us,
what could be better?
Yeah, tell us your Twitter account.
My Twitter account is Nico James, Nico James, BCN. BCN is for Barcelona, the airport code for Barcelona. Nico James, BCN.
Cool.
That's where you can find me.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. And my last question is, you talk about personal development in your tweets. You like this topic. What are some of the best personal development books that you would recommend to our audience?
Okay, there's a lot of books out there, and everyone's sort of recommending the same books. I mean, let's say, personal development book I read was David Goggins, You Can't Hurt Me. Very inspiring. But you know what, Yazzie? I like to read books which give you a better insight into people's personality. I like to read biographies. And I would recommend people to read more biographies. One of the biographies that I got inspired by was biography by Andre Agassi. For those of you who don't know who that is, he used to be one of the top tennis players in the world. Andre Agassi is called Open, and this is just a total eye-opener. Andre Agassi, I think he's still married to Steffi Graf, who was the German ladies tennis champion. And it's just an eye-opener, just the crazy personalities of the fathers that these two had, and the ups and downs, the roller coaster that they had during their lives. It just puts everything into perspective of someone's life. At the end of the day, it's all on you. Yeah. You have a life, whatever. If you're born poor, rich, or whatever, you have to put the work in to make it a fulfilling life. At the end of the day, that's what life is about. And these biographies, they just put everything into perspective, because we have all these ideals, and we see all these, famous and successful people, but we don't know what they've been through until we've read the biographies. This is such an eye-opener. And that's what I recommend to everyone who's listening. Okay. Read more biographies.
We will put these books, the links of those books in the show notes. If the audience are interested, please check it out, have a read. And thank you so much for being here, Nico. It's really, really my pleasure to have you as my guest.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Yazzie. It was really great to be here and to share all this experience in my life with you in this way. So thank you for listening, and thank you for having me. I'm really, really, really grateful for this.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Fast Track Podcast. Show me your support by liking this episode and sharing it with your friends. Join the Facebook group at Fast Track Podcast 1, or you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, and of course the homepage fasttrack.life. See you in the next episode.